some more concrete stuff. We talk about things to ponder. We talk about breathwork all the time, but this is going to be, as I on Saturdays, is going to be more sort of content to throw out for people to kind of consider. And this is about, I've been talking about trauma in relation to what's going on in the world right now. And I'm just going to walk through some stuff. Ultimately, the reason why this trauma thing is an important thing for me is because of what it makes possible. It's not because of it's not because of its a defining characteristics or possibilities. It's because of what ultimately makes possible on the other side. So a lot of times, we're kind of indoctrinated to think about trauma as a specific event, a thing that happens to folks. And although, that's perfectly reasonable to think about it that way, one of the things that I've learned over these years of working with so many amazing people that I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with is that that the more important characteristic of trauma is it's a person being exposed to something that's outside of the context of what they thought was possible. And so if we think about kind of our notion of the way the world is, things that happen outside of that context are what I consider to be traumatizing because they exist outside of that context. So we kind of walk through our world thinking, this is kind of the way things are, and all of a sudden, badoosh, something happens. And those events can be quite expansive and global. And one of the ones that I think about as a kind of a global traumatizing event, the first one was kind of 9/11. And so clearly, when I was working, I was there in a shelter in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when the planes were hitting the towers. Obviously, nothing was happening to me in the context of physical direct experiences, but what was happening was I was witnessing something that changed my understanding of the way the world is. So clearly, that's what's happening now. And so as we go through a process where this virus travels across the world and has a variety of effects in a variety of different people's lives, we kind of go, oh my gosh, well, I guess this is possible. And I talk about that a lot, so really, this notion, I had this thing in my life about changing the world, and then one morning I wake up and it already changed. And I actually didn't do anything. And so that is something that I never expected. There's this thing that I grew up with where, you work and you change the world and you make things better. Well, apparently the world can change without me having any effect on, or any, the virus didn't call me up and say, hey, you think this is going to be cool? Should we go ahead and do this? No, the virus doesn't give a crap about me or anybody else. That's a whole other story. But so this notion of trauma really being about how we experience the world in a way that's different than we thought it was. And so the reason why I find that notion of trauma so important is, as I said, because of what it makes possible. Because we take up this notion that trauma is about us experiencing the world in a way that we didn't think was possible or we never considered, then we can go, oh, all right, so actually this is kind of, we have to throw this into the pile of things that we use to make determinations about how we would describe the world. So we now go, oh, so now all these things are actually possible. And as we individually experience, and see, this is where what becomes possible thing is so important. When I've worked with folks who've experienced trauma, rather than considering their experience as something that they should get past or get over or get beyond or somehow integrate into their world in a way that makes it sort of partitioned off so that it doesn't affect them, my approach is to recognize them as experts in this experience, as people who've had extraordinarily important have had an extraordinarily important experience, which can illuminate the rest of us as to the way that the world is. And regardless of what that experience is, it needs to illuminate the rest of us as to the way that the world is. Many times these are violent experiences. Many times these are very disturbing experiences. But what they do is they say, so these are things that are possible in this world. And that in walking through a world not having that knowledge, we're kind of living in a bubble or living in a fantasy land. And so what this does is it creates a possibility for us to be more aware, more alive, and more connected to a kind of a truth. I have a difficult time with truth and reality, sort of these, because they create this, oh, this is truth, and then we end there. But it's more about an evolving sense of what's actually possible in our lives. And so these traumatizing things that happen, like this COVID experience, and then we're more illuminated as to what's possible. And so in the context of that illumination, then we can create a way of being that incorporates that. And so this notion of getting back to normal is really a part of the bubble. This is what is normal. What is actually possible in this world that we live in is for viruses to have these effects, for people to be killed by these viruses, for us to take specific steps in relation to them, and because this is also, again, back to what's possible, for us as humans to realize, wow, I can make choices in my own life that have a profound effect on myself and the people around me. So actually the things that I do on a day-to-day basis can have a profound effect on myself and the people around me. So that I don't have to be the president of the United States. I don't have to be the person that owns this huge industry. I don't have to be the man who owns this huge building in Boston in order to actually have profound effects on myself and the people around me. Now, that's for, in the context of the way the world is currently set up, that's kind of a dangerous idea. Because what it's done is it's relocated the power back in us where it was in the first place. Because the president's got to get elected. People who have lots of money got to get it from somewhere. And the guy who owns the big building in Boston is running an insurance company that if we don't pay premiums, dude's got nothing, right? So there's a relationship between all these things that we characterize as power and every single one of us. And the choices that we make can affect what those power things are, what power is, how we walk through our days. And so, so the reason why this idea is so revolutionary is because it relocates power back where it always has been, with each and every one of us and our choices. And so in relation to this huge cataclysmic, disastrous coronavirus pandemic, it still comes down to the choices you and I make every day. How this is going to unfold is always going to come down to the choices you and I make every day. And I just think that's an extraordinarily powerful and wonderful thing to learn. And every day we're experiencing it. We just found out that the active cases of coronavirus here in the Seacoast area, specifically in Portsmouth, doubled in a week. Why? Not because the coronavirus is this horrible monster thing that sneaks up on us in the middle of the night. No, it's because of choices we're making. And so guess what? We can make different choices. That is something that each and every one of us can do every day. So the value for me of this notion of trauma in the context of what's going on right now is it unifies us in the context of an experience. It talks about how we have all been illuminated, enlightened in the context of what's going on. We can make a choice to take up that knowledge if we wish to. And that, my experience is that in the context of response to trauma, people who recognize that they are now carriers of knowledge that other people may or may not have in the context of their personal experience, but now as a global thing, we are all carriers of knowledge. How we use that knowledge is the most important thing. How we take that up and accept it as something that's actually happened, and the knowledge that we now carry about a thing that's actually going on. And then the choices that we make. And so then we are very, very powerful people all of a sudden. That it's no longer located in far distant places or people we don't know or people we can't access or something that we're supposed to want to have in order to be better or somehow. No, it's just us. It comes right down to every single one of us and the power that we have to affect great change by the choices that we make each and every day. And that's pretty cool. And I've said this before already, but I just want to say it again. It's the way it's always been. This is not a new thing. It's just kind of this is a possibility for us to reclaim this thing that's been true. It's always been true. It's always been about how we walk through our days and the choices that we make to lift up that rock or move around that corner or paint that painting or write that song or make that meal or build that house. These are one step at a time, putting one foot in front of the other, one choice after another is how it's always been. And so now we have an opportunity to see that not only that's the case, but that the choices that we make, as I keep saying over and over again, I realize I keep saying this, but it's, it's kind of big, is that they have powerful effects on ourselves and the people around us. I keep doing that too. But so something to think about, how we are, that this experience that we're going through has this trauma characteristic. That trauma is a thing that happens and is not inherently destructive, and it's most destructive, in my experience, it's most destructive when we're invited to somehow consider it as an aberration, something that only happened to us, something that shouldn't have happened, something that should never happen. It's really more about things that are possible, and an illumination about what is in fact possible in the context of this existence. These are possible things. And so then we take that knowledge and we use it. We go, okay, so this is actually, we're experiencing something that's possible in the world. What do we want to do in relation to that? And that the choices that I make personally have a profound and powerful effect on myself and people around me and the world around me. The choices, specific choices that I make. So anyway, so hope everybody's having a great day. It is a gorgeous day here in northeastern United States, and I'm certainly appreciating that. And I hope it's gorgeous where you are, or it's some kind of day that you find resonates with who you are. And I am Dr. Joel, and this is What's Next with Dr. Joel, and I'll be back tomorrow for Back to Basics Sunday.